going to show you how to do the traditional magic loop method. I also have a video on the Cushion of Joy site for how to do a magic loop that I think is just a little bit easier, where you use 2 sets of circular needles. This one just uses 1 and it needs an extra long cable. I'm going to start by showing you how to do it on this piece of work that I have established. You can see that it's a tube, but you kind of think of it just being folded in half. And then I'll come back at the end and show you how to set it up. So this is, let me pull this back. This needle back here is the one I just finished working. Okay, so I just put my stitches here. My yarn, my working yarn is attached to this needle right here. So to then go kind of around the corner, I flip the piece over, and I need to make sure that these new stitches are set up on the tips of that needle, and I pull this back needle out, okay? And I just get my working yarn. So my working yarn's kind of coming up like this, kind of, I think of it kind of from the center of the project. And then there's all this extra cable right here. You just go ahead and knit across your row like usual. Just gonna do that, and then I'll get to the other side and show you again how to move your needles from one side to the other. Here's the last stitch for my left needle. And now my left needle is empty. I just let it go. I turn my work over. My yarn kind of comes up over the top of that needle into the center of the project. I pull the needle on these front stitches. I pull it through until the stitches that are now in the front, that are ready to be worked, are on the tip of this needle. Then I take the back needle that I just worked, I pull it out, and that's where I would then be set up, ready to knit again. Okay? Let me show you how to set it up. You start by simply casting on like you normally would, and just cast on into one big strip. So if I'm going to cast on, let's say, 25 stitches, I'm just going to cast them on long tail method like usual, and I'll show you what to do after that. Okay, so now I have a number of stitches cast on. I'm going to pull them into the center, so onto the cable, and then I'm going to think about dividing them in half. So just bend it in half. It doesn't matter where you pull it out, just pull it out. And for a moment, I put both sides back onto the tips of the needles, so I'm sure I'm set up how I want to be. One important step here is to make sure that the little bumps are all facing the center and you're not twisted here, okay? Then the stitches my working yarn is coming off the back. These are the stitches I'm going to work. I get my yarn, I usually go ahead and set it up on my hand, so I'm ready to go. I pull out the back needle, and then you just bend it around. So there's some left over here, but you just bend it around and you start knitting. And you really want those first 2 stitches, think about those as being a little bit tight so that it goes around the corner the way that you want and makes a loop. And I'll just get to this end one time and show you. But it's just like we did it before. It's sometimes feels a little bit more precarious right here at the beginning until it's well established. But the method is the same. Okay, so here we are at the end. We let go of that left needle. We flip the work over. So these are now the stitches we need to work are here in front. Oops, I think they're twisted though. There we go. And then we pull that needle through so they are ready to work. Yep, I can see they're a little twisted here, so we want to make sure they're all back in line how they're supposed to be, not twisted at all. There we go. So there, I'm lined up with all my little bumps right in the middle again. Once I'm set up how I want, my working yarn coming up the back, and actually remember it has to kind of come into the middle of the work. my stitches I'm going to work in the front, I pull that back needle out, and then I'm ready to go again. So one note here is that maybe one stitch in, like right here, might be where I want to put my stitch marker. You don't want your stitch marker in between the two needles if you wanted to mark the round, but you also don't necessarily have to use the stitch marker because you'll know that that space in between those two is the end of the round. It's either the space on one side or the other if you think about this being folded in half. Let me show you on the project that's more established. It's either potentially on this side or this side, and so if you had your tail yarn just coming down from the one side, you'd know that was the side where you started. And that's really all there is to it. And then the beauty of this method is even with one really long cable and the correct size tips, you can really knit anything that you want to knit. Hope that helps. Happy knitting!